Hey guys, this is Kevin Cairns, Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm joined by the one and only Jay Birdie. Yep, great. Today, this was Jess's idea to talk about goal setting. So I'm going to talk about having a larger, more arbitrary, bigger vision and a why for why you're doing things and how to work backwards into bringing that into the intermediate level goals and into the short-term goals. The stuff that basically we need to do every single day to stack up against each other to then get to those intermediate goals, to continue to stack, and then finally at the end of the road, hopefully hit our greater vision and purpose that we have for doing the things that we tend to do. I think often what you get is you get an incomplete picture when people try to set these goals. So instead of starting with this large vision, this large why, and then working backwards, what people end up doing is they're just like, oh, by this next meet, I want to hit these numbers. So it just becomes this race towards external outcomes, and it's missing the substance that's needed to actually get you through the challenges that are inevitable in anybody's journey. So as we're going to get into this, you'll realize that like having that bigger vision, that bigger why, is what helps you embrace the struggle when it is inevitable. No journey is this straight path. Right, so if you think of your path as a lifter as like a trail up a mountain, right, and you want to hit that summit at some point, you might take a trail and you might get to this point where it stops or it comes to a cliff, and then you got to turn around, and you got to come back down, and you got to find another path to finally go back up to that summit. You need to be able to hit those periods of time where you have that struggle and you have those challenges and those setbacks. You need to view it as an opportunity for a comeback, to be able to view that setback as a challenge and a learning experience that's ultimately going to allow you to grow and be able to find the right path to be able to finally summit that mountain at the end of your journey. We're going to get into the importance of defining specific terms because we all need these definitions in order to help guide our decision making, and it actually helps guide our mindset, and it gives us that resiliency and that grit that's needed to overcome obstacles so that we can actually achieve the things that we want to achieve. So the first thing that we need to start with is our why. So I'm going to kind of steal this from, I think this was a TED Talk, and I can't remember what it was called, but we have a why, a how, and a what. This was written out for business, but I think it applies to what we do even in sport. So your greater why then goes to your how, then goes to your what. So think of this as the day-to-day, think of these as the intermediate, and this is the overreaching, arbitrary, big vision that we have for ourselves and our giant goal to accomplish in this sport that helps guide the process along the way. Okay? I think it's just a good visual to see kind of where I'm going with all of this. So we need to have our why. Why do you do this sport? Like, what do you want to get out of it? Like, what is your purpose for actually picking up a barbell and want to compete in the world's most boring sport to watch? There's got to be a reason for it, right? Like, Jess, what's your why? Why are you putting me on the spot?
Give me a second.
But we need a bigger vision. So like my why as a coach is I want to make every lifter that I coach, I want them to be great. I want to be able to, sports for me. So when I had asked myself two questions, who am I and who do I want to be? So the answer that I came up to with this question was, it made me think of iron. So we're in an iron sport, so there's a nice little parallel there. But it literally, with the way that I was brought up, going through the adversity that I had to go through, coming from an abusive home with an abusive alcoholic parent, we were poor, all of those things. What it did was, iron is forged in fire, right? So you have those negative pieces of it in the beginning, and it's really hard, right? So you're going through that fire. But then on the other side of it, you become something else, right? So iron is molded into something, right? So once you light it on fire, it could be a number of different things. So I like to think of it, if I was putting chapters on my life, like I was forged in the fire there, but then I was turned into something that now I can start giving back to other people, right? I can start giving them the things that allowed me to overcome the adversities in my life, a lot of which I learned through participating in sports for over 30 years. I want to be able to teach other people those aspects of sport so that they can get better in life. And that's ultimately how you become great. Because at the end of the day, nobody gives a fuck about your total, but they're going to give a fuck about how you helped other people and how you carried yourself. And I think that part's really important. So like once iron's molded into something, it can become something that helps other people. And I think when I look back on my life in those aspects of it, it gives my upbringing a purpose. So it's easy to look back and be like, that was terrible, all these bad things happened to me, and having this like negative mindset towards everything and just using it as an excuse not to improve myself and to take those lessons that I learned throughout that period of time to better and to keep bettering myself over time. But I think becoming a coach, it allows me to give purpose to that darker period of my life. And so for me, that's who I am and that's who I want to be. And I'm always working towards who I want to be. So my why is that right there. It's just being able to give the gift of sport and what sport teaches people and how to handle adversity, how to embrace struggle. Because all of us are going to encounter some struggle in our typical day-to-day lives. It's inevitable. You're going to encounter that struggle, and how you deal with it is basically what's going to define your character over time and your success over time. And like how I define success is as simple as this. It's just giving it your all of the time. It's that simple. And as simple as that definition seems, it's very hard to actually do because it's always easy. There'll always be an out and there'll always be a straw you can grasp to use as an excuse to be like, this is why I couldn't fucking do this. But it's nothing more than that. It's just something you're just holding yourself down at that point. So for me, I want to be able to give those gifts of sport to each person I coach. And the cool thing about powerlifting is anybody can do it. You can literally be a world champion lifter and the strongest person on earth. You can do it. You could be the physically weakest person on earth, but you can get the same gifts from it. You can participate in the sport in the same way. And I think it's one of the only sports that offers that to people. It's fucking scary for most people to put heavy weight on their back and actually sit down and stand back up with it. So it's going to challenge them mentally and it's going to challenge them both mentally and physically. And over time, because you are going to get injured, there's going to be negative setbacks. There's going to be bad things that happen. So it's going to challenge you spiritually too. And I think what you end up seeing is you see a lot of people who participate in this sport, they last 3 to 5 years and then they quit because they finally need to embrace that struggle. And they're incapable of doing it because they've never had to do hard things in their entire lives. The world that we live in now is based off of comfort, right? We have thermostats that keep our houses to the set temperature we want. We can easily get food and meals and eat whatever we want. We don't ever have to be uncomfortable in our lives. And it's because our lives are set up in a way to be comfortable. Sports is one of the only ways that we can actually embrace being uncomfortable and really challenge ourselves in ways that we typically can't get in our day-to-day lives. So I think it's really important that like when you sit down and you think about why do I want to be a power lifter? And you have a good personal reason for that. So like I told you mine, and other people need to be able to really find what it means to them. You can't have my why because it's not going to mean the same thing to you as it means to me. So we'll go back to Jess who's scrolling on Instagram because she doesn't care. But what's your why? Yeah, why do you want to be a lifter?
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with my own coaching, like you said. I mean, if I'm going to be a strength coach and teach people powerlifting, I feel like it's crucial that I also do the same thing. So that's a big motivation for me to kind of like go through the same struggles, the same type of woes of powerlifting. But the deeper why is definitely being constantly pushed out of my comfort zone. I mean, what you just said about like always being comfortable, I think I tend to like fall into wanting to always have a comfortable life and like, I mean, anything where I'm slightly uncomfortable, I'm like, I try to fix it. So with powerlifting, it really does force me to be uncomfortable. A lot of times it does make me feel stronger, more confident than I thought I was before that particular session.
So Jess and I have talked before, and I'm going to bring up something that we had talked about your feelings of inadequacy stemming from like middle school time, right? A sport that you can only count on yourself, right? The weights are what they are every single day, and your ability to get underneath them and do them regardless of what's going on in your daily life only exists in you, right? Like, do you think that there's something larger there? Like it's a way that you can learn how to count on yourself and like not feel so inadequate to yourself? Because you said building confidence, right? So that needs to come from a personal position. Would you say I'm off base there?
No.
Right? So like there's Jess's personal why, right? To learn how to rely on herself and to have that self-confidence to be able to be a better coach or whatever else she's trying to do in her life, right? So like it needs to be an arbitrary bigger thing. So if our why is to be the strongest version of ourselves that we can be, okay? Well, how do we get there? That's going to be the next step, right? And in these intermediate levels, this can be more like external outcomes, right? So we need to make sure that one, they do exceed our skill level slightly, right? And they need to be a stretch. So like competing at nationals might be something that Jess would want to do, right? So let's say we go here, compete at nationals one day. So if we compete at nationals, right? And it doesn't even matter where your skill level is, because at some point, if you stick with it long enough, because of age brackets and everything else, you'll have that opportunity to compete at nationals. You can get into equipment. You can, where the totals seem to be a little bit easier to get. You can just age into just having a total to go into nationals. And people laugh at it, right?
No, but it's true.
But the thing about that is, if you've been doing this sport for 30 fucking years, and you've never had a total that qualified you for nationals, but all of a sudden you're in an age bracket that all you need is a total to qualify, nobody can take away that 30 years of experience underneath that barbell. And think of how many times you're going to encounter some type of adversity and some type of setback that literally kept you coming back. The average person lasts 3 to 5 years in this sport. And if you're able to do something long enough where all of a sudden you're in an age bracket where you don't need a qualifying total, you just need a total, that's pretty fucking amazing. That you're lasting 10 times longer than the average person in that sport. That you've been able to handle every adversity, every setback that life and the sport put in front of you, and you're still standing there competing and wanting to compete at a high level. I think that's, to me, that says a lot more about a character of somebody than somebody who's really good out of the gate, 3 to 5 years, they win a world championship and then they're out of the sport. Good for you, you did something you were good at, you accomplished something, you got a medal. Half the people in powerlifting might give a fuck, the majority of us don't, and they're gonna forget about you tomorrow. But they're gonna remember that person who's been in this sport for 30 years, because think of how many paths that person's gonna cross, how many people they've probably helped along the way, how many people have helped them along the way. They're gonna be somebody that everybody's going to be rooting for at that stage of their lives. And I think that's a really important concept to understand. Am I right? I'm gonna outlive every motherfucker, and that's how I'm gonna win a world championship. I'm stubborn enough to do it. Okay, so once we have that goal, right, that intermediate goal, we want to compete at nationals, right? So Jess is a 72 kilo lifter. Her best total is 332 and a half. Yes, I know your numbers off the top of my head, right? I'm not sure what the actual qualifying total is at 72, but it's over 400 kilos. So Jess is quite a distance away from it. I think it's like 415.
69, 76 now.
Oh, that's right. They switched the...
I don't know if there's any.
So let's say it's around 415 kilos. So let's say Jess is about 80 kilos away from qualifying for nationals, right? So let's say average, you're putting 15 to 20 kilos on your total a year, and that's probably above average progress. You can move faster than that, but then you run some risks. So let's say she's about 5 years away from having that total of qualifying for nationals. Now, Jess doesn't do anything she's supposed to do. Am I right?
No.
No, but let's say she's 5 years away, right? So we have that compete at nationals. Let's put that up here. Okay, so what do we have to do? Okay, So what do we have to do to get to that point, right? Because there's 5 years of stuff, so there's going to be layers to this. So maybe where we stack up one of these is, let's say a 380 total would qualify her at regionals, top 3 to get a national invite, right? So that's one way. So we could put, you know, an arbitrary number there, but like a top 3 finish at regionals right here. All right, now, what other things do we need to be able to do there, right? So we need to be able to stack steady progress on top of each other. So there's gonna be these check-ins every so often. So for us, our programs run basically every 4 to 6 months, they test their lifts, right? So we gotta be able to, we gotta make sure we're doing all those little things in order to, every 6 months, to move the needle forward, right? So the day-to-day stuff, right? So we got sleep, nutrition, stress, okay? And we also probably want to set, you know, technique goals. So when I talk about technique goals, like one of the things, what's a lift you're really weak at? High bar squats, right? So Jess's high bar squat is 30 pounds below your low bar squat, 235 to 265. Right, so Jess's high bar squat's 30 pounds, which is a lot on a 265 pound squat, right? So like, obviously there's an upper back weakness that we need to strengthen there, right? So that's where we would put these like little goals here. Okay, so if our high bar squat's 235, let's get this up to 250. And we can set a time period on that so that we create this sense of urgency, right? So high bar squat, 250 by the end of the year, right? 15 pounds on a variation, right? And we'll use safety squat bar. We'll do a bunch of stuff to really build it up. Alyssa had a good example with this because her sumo deadlift, when she had first started sumo deadlifting, was like in the 200s. And it was about 100, close to 150 pounds behind her conventional deadlift. So we set these goals of just building up that sumo deadlift. And there was about, for 52 straight weeks, she got sumo deadlifts in her program. We really built it up. She's now pulling 414 pounds is her best in the gym. She's pulled 407 on the platform. But she had pulled, what's that?
In sumo?
Conventional. Her best sumo now is like 380-ish. So we really built it up over the course of now the last 2 years, right? So that's where those goals, if you see a big lagging weakness in something, you really got to build it up, because ultimately your weaknesses are what's going to break you, right? So like Louis Simmons has this quote, weak things break. Weak things also, you can't build upon them, right? So Jess's upper back, yeah, we can put the bar lower and we can try to do all of these things to negate it. She can round her upper back on a deadlift and get away with it, right? Because that technical, just having the technique of a rounded upper back might play to her leverages a little bit better. It might even be a little bit of an advantage, but it's not in a squat. So that bar path out of the hole, the speed out of the hole, the upper back plays an important, if not the most important, role, because it's the very first thing that has to happen. So when you hit the hole, it's your upper back that starts moving it upwards first. So if that part's weak on that chain with Jess, she's going to pitch forward, she's going to lose speed out of the hole, it's going to leave weight out on that platform, right? And if we have to add 80 kilos to her total, right, while working full time and doing all the other things that she does in her life, we need to be able to get every fucking ounce out of all of our lifts. And that's what maximizing your potential is. Like if she's squatting 265 now, but her upper back can only handle a 235 high bar squat, she's not maximizing her potential. There's a lot more that can be had there on that squat because we have a weakness that we need to attack. So then this one here might be, because obviously like learning to compete and competing is an important part of this sport, right? Especially if you want to compete at a high level. So maybe we make a goal of compete 2 times per year for the next 5 years, right? We just throw it on the calendar, whatever arbitrary thing it is, right? And then all of these are going to filter down into the things we need to do day to day. So one of the daily goals for Jess is phone off by 10:15, right? So that it doesn't distract her and keep her up. So yes, there's going to be setbacks where that stuff doesn't happen, but when there are setbacks, you just start over again, right? But we have these little things that we need to do. So like one of the things that I do is I make sure I drink 40 ounces of water before I even leave my house for the day, so that I'm at least ahead of the 8 ball in terms of hydration, right? So making sure we're drinking water, making sure we're getting the sleep that we need. 10 minutes of meditation per day. Like you might have to structure these in a way where you schedule them out. So I wake up in the morning. The first thing I do, I make coffee. I write in my journal. I do the work that I need to do, whether it's writing programs, looking at videos. I'll even read some stuff. When I feel my brain starting to get exhausted, I'll meditate for 10 minutes. I'll, take a little bit of a break, maybe eat something, whatever I'm doing. But I make sure that I get all of these things in that I need to get in. Whether I sleep, I get at least 8 hours of sleep a night. I fall asleep, I stay asleep. I hydrate, I meditate, I journal. It's part of my stress management. I could still do better with stress management stuff too. There's always stuff that we can do to improve upon, because some people just stress you out more than others. But we need to make sure we're doing all of these things. And if you truly want to be great, my goal as a coach is to literally make each lifter I coach great. And whatever that turns into for each one, it's going to be individualized based off of their ability to display their true potential. And that's what greatness is. So for some people, yes, they'll be able to compete at a national level. Some people an international level. Some people are going to have to stick with this sport long enough to be able to age into a national qualifier. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I've used this analogy before. We all start on the start line, right? And some people more genetically gifted, they get to take some steps forward. Some people are able to maybe not work and handle more stress in the gym and stuff like that. And everybody's getting closer and closer to that finish line based off of genetics and life circumstances. Some of us are still on that starting line when we start. And for those people who are on that starting line, yeah, it's going to take longer to get to that finish line. But when you do, there's a lot more to be proud of sticking with something in the long term like that, to be able to finally achieve it. And we got to be able to do these things. This is what greatness is being able to do these small things every fucking day for a long period of time. That, yes, of course, there's going to be days you miss doing things, and then you just pick it up the next day. You don't let setbacks fucking ruin you. You use that as a learning experience and just keep pushing forward, keep pushing forward, keep pushing forward. And if you do that long enough and you give it your all to actually commit to those things over the long term, you're going to be able to achieve whatever it is you want to be able to achieve. What's really important is having that why. So for me, I'm going to use my coaching one because I lift to be a better coach. I just love to fucking compete. I don't care what type of sport it is. I love challenging myself. So like for me, lifting, I get to have that ability to challenge myself, but I use it as something to just learn how to become a better coach. I took singles for a whole year just so I would be able to better understand how to program them in for lifters and how to handle those singles and to do those things in training. Because I truly believe the ones who can do more singles in training, they're just going to be better equipped to compete, and they're going to be better equipped to do their best on meet day. And since we've done more singles, most of my lifters hit within 2.5 kilos of their best lifts almost 90% over 90% of the time on that platform. It's very rare that they're hitting less than what they've hit in the gym on that platform. So there are times though when I'm doing this job where I want to fucking quit, where I have these big lofty goals for people, and of course we have these conversations and we both agree with these things. But again, you deal with a certain type of fucking person and it's like, man, I can't fucking help you. There's no way you're gonna achieve what I want you to achieve. And then I wanna quit. No, but it does. It gets to be a lot over time sometimes. And it's like, man, I don't know if I can do this. But then I realized that I've overcome impossible a couple of times in my life. That coaching people up and giving them the same skills that allowed me to overcome some of those obstacles in my life, that's easy. I've done it before. I just need to stick with it. And it just reminds me of my why, right? That like, I went through the shit I had to go through when I was younger. It gives me my purpose to be able to use those experiences to help people embrace their struggles, whether it's with life or lifting, they're one and the same. Lifting just becomes this symbol of what happens in life, because you're going to encounter challenges, you're going to encounter obstacles, you're going to encounter people that don't like you, you're going to encounter people that like you, you're going to do things You're going to be forced to do things that make you uncomfortable. So sports in general is just a symbol for life, but it allows you to really test your character in that arena. That then, when you really solidify that character in that arena and you take that character outside of the arena, you're going to be a better coach, whatever your job is, whatever it is you're trying to be better at, you're just going to be better at doing it because you've prepared yourself to be better at doing it. So having that strong why for me allows me, when those thoughts creep in, to refocus my attention and bring it back to where I need to make sure I'm doing my best and I'm giving my lifters my 100% every time that I'm having a conversation with them. And one of the mistakes, and I think it's important to highlight these things, that I've made for a long period of time was trying to force my ideals on other people. So we always say, and no coach is going to disagree with me when I say this, but that coaches need to listen more than they talk. And that doesn't mean just letting the other person talk and then you telling them what you feel you need to tell them. I think, when I think of like examples for me, the easiest one, because this would happen all the time, somebody would miss a lift in training, and I'd be like, oh, Mrs. Happy, you can't worry about it type of thing. But they'd be fucking worried about it. And they'd be sulking and doing all these other things, and I'd be like, well, you can't fucking worry about it. And then I'm getting all pissed off, and then they're getting even more pissed off. And I wasn't listening to them, right? Even though I'd let them talk, and then I'd come back with that, I'm not listening. So now it becomes more of just asking a question. And you ask questions that lead them to answers that they're like, oh yeah, I'm acting like a fucking idiot. I probably shouldn't worry about this so much. So like maybe in that case now it might be, how is being upset going to help you make the best decision you need to make moving forward? How has being upset after any missed lift ever worked in your favor? Right? So if you ask these questions that just they really only have one answer. It hasn't worked. I need to be able to refocus. And I think it gets tough for a lot of people because I think if you set your goals up in a way where they're just external outcomes, like let's say Jess's best total is 332.5 and she goes, I want to hit a 350 kilo total at my next meet, right? It's not unreasonable, but that's a big total PR. So if that's her goal there and she's just putting all of her worth in the sport of powerlifting on whether she's going to hit that 350 kilo total or not, you're never going to be in the moment because you're always basically thinking to that moment when you're competing. So if you miss a repetition in the gym, right, a max effort lift, now I'm not going to hit that squat I need to hit my 350 kilo total, right? Instead of just worrying about being in the present moment at that given time and just doing the best you can at that given time, because if you stack effortful days, if you give 100% effort every fucking day you go into the gym, how do good things not happen? It's when you start worrying about future outcomes and you start focusing on external outcomes like that, you tense up, you make emotional decisions, and you don't perform at your highest level. And then you get frustrated, which then becomes this cyclical thing, which then you tense up, you make poor decisions, you get frustrated, you tense up, you make poor decisions, you get frustrated, you probably fucking quit. But in a lot of cases, you'll fire your coach, you'll go do something else, and that's fine because now you can be somebody else's fucking problem. But you need to be able to understand the training process, right? So if you have that greater why, right? Like, why do I want to do this sport? Well, because I've been told since I was in middle school, I'm inadequate. I've been made to feel I'm inadequate. But I give myself that opportunity every single day to step underneath that bar and prove to myself and prove to everybody else in my own mind that I am adequate, that I am strong, that I am capable, right? So if you get into one of these situations where you get nervous or you have that setback, right? So let's say Jess goes into the gym, she misses a squat. She can either have that tail between her legs and just be like, I am inadequate like everybody told me, or it can be, hey, I know this is part of the process. Being able to overcome this setback shows me to myself and shows me to other people that I'm not inadequate, that I'm able to handle this adversity and I'm still able to step forward. And then I'll hit the adversity again and I'll step forward again. I'll learn how to embrace struggle because those who embrace that struggle like that, they're not inadequate. right? You become very adequate in life and in sport in general if you're able to handle that adversity. So if you have those bigger, deeper meaning to why you're doing things, you're going to be able to overcome those setbacks and adversity a lot easier than if your goal is just some arbitrary external outcome, which is inevitably just going to end in you being disappointed. Because as we all know, this process is not linear. So if your goals are always the next total, the next total, the next total, yeah, it might work for 3 to 5 years because beginner gains and all of that stuff, you can gain weight, you can whatever. It's easy to get somebody to have progress for 3 to 5 years. But you're going to hit this spot where that linear progress stops. And then what are you going to do? You haven't equipped yourself with the skills necessary to handle a setback like that. You're going to blame your coach. You're going to blame whoever. Nobody's going to want to be around you in the gym because you're just going to be a miserable fucking asshole. And you're probably going to end up quitting the sport. And ultimately, if you don't develop those skills, those character traits, to be able to enjoy the training process, to view setbacks as an opportunity to grow and to learn, every setback is an opportunity for a comeback, right? If you have that frame of mind that when you encounter those problems and you have that bigger why to why you're doing it, you can remind yourself where it's like, fuck, this sucks, but I'm not somebody who quits because this is why I'm doing this. It helps you handle those situations. And most people don't do this work. They don't look deep inside themselves and truly understand why they're doing something. I think a lot of people that you probably admire on the internet just do it because they were fucking good at this sport. And it's like, good, you're good at a sport that people do to be better at other sports. Like, great. At the end of the day, all records are going to be broken. People are going to lift more weight. But even if you can lift weight and your character is weak, like you're not strong. Nobody gives a shit. You can't outlift being a fucking asshole. And I think that's what you see a lot. Like, internet powerlifting is not powerlifting in real life. But if everybody had a deeper reason why they're doing stuff, I think it gives you a greater purpose. And it helps ease a lot of that pressure. Because I think what you see is everybody wants to post these PR posts, and I did this and I did that, the highlight reel of Instagram. And they just put so much pressure on themselves to be something greater than what they think that they are on the internet. Like, and they use that being greater thing as just numbers on a bar. The numbers on a bar will be there if you give it your whole effort and you really commit to it. You commit to your eating, you commit to your sleeping, you commit to your hydration, your stress management, your training program. You know, there's always going to be these opportunities to blame the coach, blame the program, and blame these other things. And you have a choice. You can either take it and blame all of them and then move on to the next program, or you can just commit to it, right? Because ultimately, if you have a greater why that's greater than arbitrary numbers, every fucking program out there fucking works, right? It's what you're bringing to it. And I get it if you don't want to do something because it's not fun or whatever. But like, it's what you bring to it. If you want to be part of the community, you like that coach, you just fucking commit to it. And if you commit to it and you do all the things you're supposed to do, the numbers take care of themselves over time. Make sense? Questions?
No.
Good. You can follow me on Instagram. It's KWCan. Our team, Precision Powerlifting Systems.